My name is Alan Wake. I'm a writer. For 13 years, I've been trapped in a dark place, experiencing possible horrors that are sick and twisted even by my standards. 2 years ago,
a place that is dark.
Although many people think that my writing was poor, it turns out that it's actually pretty good. And I did return from the previous departure.
Not
everybody understands
themselves
just how difficult
it
is will they dub me the champion of light?
They also don't know how difficult it is to record a podcast.
Champion of
a night that is not night.
If you're a writer,
I'll show you the Herald of Darkness, lost in a never-ending night, diving deep to the surface.
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Oh, welcome to the worst of all possible worlds, the first and only podcast to champion the Herald of Darkness. I am the worst of all possible AJs.
The worst of all possible Bryans.
and I'm Mickey Mouse.
What the fuck? What?
No, we're back. I'm the worst of all possible Joshes. We're back. We're here for you with another case study in the pop culture of a dying empire. And this time around, we're taking a look at something that a lot of you have wanted us to talk about. And frankly, we've wanted to talk about it too.
Yeah.
Yes, we are returning to the woods to get comfy once again with Alan Wake in his latest adventure, Alan Wake 2.
You guys need to know how much I have begged these men not to make me play another fucking Remedy game for this podcast. And the worst thing is, I didn't play Alan Wake 1. I didn't have a device that I could play it on.
That's right.
You guys played it. Our guest Jack played it. And I had watched a bunch of videos and talked to you guys beforehand and all of that. So I was like, I don't really remember what happened because I don't remember anything that we do on the podcast. So in December, they did a remastered version of it that I got for free on PlayStation Plus. I went and played it in December and had a horrible time. I just didn't understand how bad it felt at every single moment to play that game. I hate it so much. That's my review.
of Alan Wake 1.
Of Alan Wake 1.
Alan Wake 1, because it turns out Alan Wake 2, a little different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a little bit different. I don't want to show my hand too early, but too bad. I love this fucking game. Holy shit. They pulled it off. Sam Lake, a man who I genuinely thought did not have this in him.
Yeah.
Pulled out what might be one of the greatest games of last year and maybe one of my favorite games I've played in a very long time. So I am so excited that we get to talk about this today and that we get to go on a Sam Lake apology tour, I guess.
That's right. Sam Lake, get your ukulele ready. You need to apologize to us. It's exciting, right? Because when we played Alan Wake originally for our episode, all the way back in what was that again?
2022, February or March or something.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, we re-released that episode as well last week. And if you haven't had a chance to listen, you can go back. It's been unlocked. It's free. Little quick bullet point here. Remedy Entertainment, video game studio based out of Espoo, Finland. You might also know it as the home of Nokia.
Oh, shit.
Yep, second largest city in Finland.
Mm-hmm. And Remedy rose to acclaim with Max Payne, which was the first sort of big budget game that they developed. It wasn't their very first game, but it was the first one to get major acclaim. Released that in 2001. They released the follow-up Max Payne 2 in 2003. And both of these games were published by Take-Two under the Rockstar Games label.
They were written by a fellow named Sam Lake, who very quickly made a name for himself as sort of an auteur in the video game world, something that's very rare, something that you usually associate typically more with Japanese developers, right? You got Iga, Suda,
and Kojima.
Yeah, of course. But Lake is the rare Finnish, the rare Finnish person. There's not a lot of them.
We pop in and out of the top 250 podcasts in Finland. So I'm hoping that this episode puts us back in that top 250.
It is so funny because this game is so Finnish in a way that no other Remedy game before it really is.
Yeah.
And we're going to delve into that a little bit later, but it is worth pointing out that like for a long time, I think Remedy has tried to make games that are more American, and it is so lovely that we finally get to celebrate the great country of Finland.
Well, and a lot of that comes back to Sam Lake, right? Because Sam Lake started out just being a developer. He got roped into it in college. He was not one of the co-founders.
He was a film student, and somebody that he played D&D with in high school had started a game studio and was like, "Hey, you're a writer." And he's like, "Yes, I'm a writer."
Yes, I'm a writer.
And they had this car game that they made first. And so he wrote some little things for that. And then Max Payne was like, what if we make a game just based on my writing, where my writing fucking dominates it and there's like constant narration and everything.
And, you know, big fan of like noir and American cinema noir specifically. And so Sam Lake pretty quickly puts his creative imprint on Remedy. And after Max Payne, and especially Max Payne 2, he becomes more or less synonymous with the studio. He ends up getting named creative director a little bit later on. And I think that it's fair to say that what people think of as a quote unquote Remedy game is pretty much what Sam Lake wants to make becomes a Remedy game in many ways.
Yeah, and what's been more the case over the past couple games is that it's what Sam Lake wants and then inspires other people to want, and then they throw some more stuff into the gumbo. So as Remedy has gone on, their games have gotten more and more complicated, and there are more and more moving parts. Like we see in Control the introduction of a musical number, for example, which is now seemingly becoming a staple of it. But there is...
I'm okay with that.
I would love. I mean, it fucking rules.
They've really improved on the formula too.
There's always a sort of a live action element that they love to incorporate into a Remedy game.
It's always a third person shooter. There's always narration and voiceover happening. There's always very talkative characters, movie type editing and filming, including actual live action footage, starting with Alan Wake, starting with the first Alan Wake with those really, really bad Night Springs segments. That they're like, oh, what if we put some actual money into this later? They have some live action for Alan Wake's American Nightmare. They do a ton of live action for Quantum Break, which is the one game I think none of us have played.
Yeah. Neither of you played Quantum Break.
It was a Microsoft game, and I've never had like an Xbox or anything.
So I mentioned Max Payne and Max Payne 2.
Yeah.
Those games, again, published by Rockstar, but even though they reviewed well, they didn't sell as well as Take-Two was hoping. And so they dropped Remedy as a developer. And very importantly, Take-Two retained the rights to the Max Payne intellectual property. And so they ended up then developing another sequel, Max Payne 3, in-house at Rockstar without Remedy being involved at all. And this is very important.
Yes.
You wouldn't think it would be as important as it is for the Alan Wake sequel that you know the actual backstory of the Remedy studio, but it is integral.
Yeah. Because in the first Alan Wake, if we remember, Alan Wake, who is a writer, he'll let us know that on occasion.
Loves Stephen King.
He's having his Stephen King writing misery moment where he's hit writer's block. He doesn't know what he wants to do next, and his wife takes him up to a lake.
It's not a lake.
It's not a lake. It's an ocean.
Yes, but it's also a lake. And then he gets hainted and whatever. But
I'm sorry, hainted?
Hainted, yeah, by all the haints.
Yeah.
But when we get little flashbacks to his life in New York City, he's a hotshot writer of mystery detective novels.
Yes.
Starring a character named Alex Casey. And the couple of times you get to read a couple pages, you hear voiceover, and that voiceover is the same voice actor who played Max Payne.
Right. James McCaffrey, rest in peace, by the way.
Just passed away.
Just passed away, but totally integral to sort of this core mythos here where you have this hard-boiled detective character, and he is, for all intents and purposes, Max Payne. And I think that if they were legally able to do so, Alan Wake would have just been the writer of Max Payne. But they can't do that because Take-Two owns Max Payne now.
And honestly, we're better for it. We're better for that limitation that's been placed on them because you're always playing with the knowledge that you are looking at and hearing Max Payne, but not Max Payne, this other thing that he's transformed into. Yeah.
Right. I don't know how tolerable it would have been had it just been Max Payne in the Alan Wake days, you know? Like,
There's
if
a
you had to
hole.
play,
There's a hole behind me.
like that. I mean, Alan Wake was unbearable enough with Barry just constantly running around too.
Hey, it's me, your agent. Ain't I a goofy guy?
I'm so goofy. You'll be happy to know Barry is not in Alan Wake 2.
No.
He's mentioned a lot.
Barry got
but he's not
shoved
in it.
firmly through the no-no door.
He's gone.
Because the DLC gets really Barry heavy, and then Alan Wake's American Nightmare like hangs on Barry. And I think they realized we can't.
Well,
keep
he's the
doing
Jar
this.
Jar of the series.
Yeah.
He's the
it's
key to all
the key
of
to
this.
everything. The
Yeah.
key that he keeps fucking dropping. It's worth noting that Alan Wake may very well not have come about were it not for the fact that Remedy and Take-Two broke up, right? After
Yes.
that breakup, they needed to start developing a new IP.
Yeah.
They signed an exclusivity deal with Microsoft Game Studios, and Alan Wake was released for Xbox 360 in 2010.
After a 5-year development
Yes.
cycle. This game was originally supposed to be this physics-heavy, open-world horror game with a day-night cycle, with all the like stuff that you would see maybe 10 years later more frequently. And
You
obviously,
could drive
like
those cars all around.
Yeah, and,
those
like,
cars that
Remedy
you
was
could
not-
control.
Remedy was not a AAA studio, as you said,
Right.
Josh. Like they sold well, they weren't selling the kind of well that Take-Two demanded from its developers.
Right.
And yeah, they didn't have the stuff required to do both this really impressive technical stuff with lighting effects and physics objects that are all flying around all the time, which is another one of their staples since Max Payne. And instead, they had to like chop it down. And I think the Alan Wake that we have is a very chopped down game, which is why stuff like the tutorial is really strange and confusing.
Yeah, and this is not uncommon. And
Yeah.
you know, for a sort of large but not huge studio that's very ambitious, that wants to try new things, you end up in sort of a tug of war oftentimes with the publisher.
Yeah.
I think that in many cases, a developer will think that they can deliver more than they actually can. And at the end of the day, the publisher kind of has to make some hard choices about what will ship. And the ultimate product, Alan Wake, again, sold pretty well as an Xbox 360 exclusive. There was a follow-up PC port in 2012. And that's really sort of like before they did the remasters in 2021, that was kind of the gold standard.
Yeah.
And again, if you want to hear more about Alan Wake, just go back to that Unlocked episode from last week. We did not have fun with that.
It's a fun episode, but
It is a fun episode.
oh boy, we did not have fun with that.
I forgot how hard I went into the bits on that one. I became Bits Boy.
Well, right, because you didn't actually play the whole thing, so you
Yeah.
had to be the bits guy.
It's so interesting too, because American Nightmare then like doubles down on everything that was kind of bad in Alan
Yeah.
Wake. Like it gets a lot more sexist.
Well, and that's what's confusing, right? Is Alan Wake then sold 2 DLCs, and then it made this game called American Nightmare, which is not a full game. It's sort of like what Ubisoft does with these Far Cry sequel things, right?
Right,
Where
right,
it's like, it's not a DLC, but it
It's an
also
ocean.
kind of is.
It's an ocean.
And so American Nightmare is kind of shorter. It's built using assets that they already have, but also a lot of new assets because it's set in Arizona for some reason. A lot of live action
Right.
footage. And some of this came out of an idea for Alan Wake 2 that they decided that they weren't going to pursue.
So yeah, after American Nightmare is released, Remedy starts working on a full sequel, right? They want to
Yeah.
pitch Microsoft on Alan Wake 2. They did a full internal prototype. If you take a look in the notes, we've got a link to a video of that prototype, which was not publicly released because Microsoft didn't want to publish it.
Yeah.
And so instead, Remedy started working on a brand new game, and that game was called Quantum Break, and it was released in 2016.
Yeah. So Quantum Break veered away from horror and it went into science fiction, time travel-y, physics simulation kind of shit. And they got Sean Ashmore, Aidan Gillen, Lance Reddick, and Dominic Monaghan. Lance Reddick will be important later. To play these characters that are in the game, but also now there are extensive FMV scenes. Now, so for Alan Wake, the FMV was used for bonus stuff. So ever since Max Payne 2, there have been like TVs you can watch in Remedy games. In Max Payne 2, the TVs are showing shows that have some voiceover and they're basically slideshows. For Alan Wake, the TV shows that you watch are hastily put together footage of some office inside of Remedy, and then voiceover trying to make sense of it. And then in Quantum Break, there not only is stuff you can see on TV, including a teaser for what will become Alan Wake 2, but also there are scenes involving characters in the story that you just watch as live action footage.
Right. And it's worth noting as well that this, like, integrating live action FMV into a 3D rendered world, this is built into the engine.
Yeah.
Because they build a brand new engine for Quantum Break called Northlight. And Northlight is still their engine. They use it for Alan Wake 2, right? Because they have a very specific style of storytelling that they are trying to pull off. And so they build their own engine in-house to facilitate that storytelling.
And in terms of like the larger Remedy universe, Quantum Break is sort of the least integral in terms of like recurring characters that are exactly the same, but there are characters that do come into Alan Wake 2 that are from Quantum Break. The protagonist of Quantum Break, the actor who plays him, plays a character in Alan Wake 2.
The actor who plays Quantum Break?
Yes, the actor plays Quantum Break. He plays a character named...
I'm a breaker.
He plays a character in Alan Wake called Tim Breaker. Yeah. That is his name.
So Quantum Break, again, a pretty decent success, although worth noting that at this point, Microsoft is no longer their publisher. So they seek out another publisher and they get 505 games this time around.
And 505 is an Italian publisher that mostly worked on European releases of games that then started pursuing a much more aggressive strategy of global publication.
And Control is one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, there are aspects of that game that I think don't entirely hit, particularly in the latter half.
Yeah.
But the vibes of that game are pretty immaculate.
Yeah, we talked about playing Control for the podcast, and honestly, we don't like it or dislike it enough for it to, I think, make a good episode. But it starts, I mean, it comes out of the gate incredibly fucking strong. And then it just, the story itself just kind of gets dumber and the combat just is very repetitive for me. Josh likes it.
Well, I do. I mean, I like it mechanically quite a bit, although I have not played past the first few hours, so who can say if that's the case throughout? What I will say about Control is that it is tight.
Oh, yeah.
The gunplay and the way that you can throw shit around and all of that. You will hear me yell repeatedly in our Max Payne 2 episode about how frustrating I found the combat in that game.
Yeah.
Things are not signaled effectively. The actual gunplay itself feels sluggish and confusing frequently to me. With Control, on the other hand, as long as you are down with what the game is trying to do, you can have some fun with it. And broadly speaking, I would say that I did. The biggest thing that you should know about Control, though, in terms of how it matters for Alan Wake 2, is that it is part of the same universe.
Yeah.
Within Control, you play an agent working for a U.S. government agency called the Bureau of Control. And the FBC is, you know, it's like the FBI or the CIA. And rather than dealing with crimes, they deal with matters of the paranormal. It's like SCP shit, right?
Yep. It's the X-Files office.
Yep.
And they deal with altered world events. AWEs.
Yes.
Altered world. Alan Wake E. Ooh.
Ooh.
And they deal with objects of power and these they've created an explanation for what happens in Alan Wake that's not annoying. Like, it's just like, okay, here's this world where like inexplicable things happen. They're localized to certain places. The Alan Wake thing is one of them. The Alan Wake DLC of Control was very disappointing to me. It's just like, oh yeah, you remember the psychiatrist? He's like long now.
Yeah, he's the longest psychiatrist you've ever seen. He's skittling around the roof. He's just attacking you in the dark, and you gotta go get him.
Oh,
you gotta go take him out.
I'm just scrounging and skittling. You know how it's been.
I'm so long. I'm skittling now. You can't catch me. And he like scurries into the vents.
I like the idea of like, you know what's scary? A psychiatrist. You know what's even scarier? A long psychiatrist.
Oh, he better not be skittling. Because if he's skittling, I'm going to be too scared to play that game.
So Control also makes some innovations in how it does FMV sequences, which it still has. There are TVs that you can watch. And it also incorporates full motion live action video into the environment in really clever ways. They found a really neat way to light these things that they just kind of look nice to walk through in a 3D environment where everyone is backlit and silhouetted. And so they have like sort of a halo of light around them, and you will see sort of a projection of it in front of you while also seeing a larger version of it or a variation on it in the foreground, sort of logged in the same place that like a lens flare would show up.
And also, I think the actor who plays the scientist who you're mostly seeing in these live action scenes is really good.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I do, actually.
Yeah.
I think he's a...
Do you know who that actor is playing that scientist?
Is it you?
Yes, it's me. That's Matthew Peretta. That is the voice of Alan Wake.
Is it really?
By the way, the other, you know who the voice is of the director of the Bureau of Control? James McCaffrey, the voice of Max Payne.
That's right. Yeah.
So this is the other thing that I wanted to point up too about Remedy is that they will find guys and they will stick with them.
Yeah, they
like
keep around.
It's one of those things where they clearly value, and I think a piece of this as well is to do with Sam Lake himself and the fact that he likes working with the same collaborators over and over and over again, which is, I think he is at heart a theater guy in many ways, and that is very much a theater guy quality.
Sam Lake really does seem to lean into collaboration, particularly in between when Alan Wake comes out and Alan Wake 2.
Yeah.
He talks a lot about how much he's changed and grown since Alan Wake 1. And Control, I think, is like the big leap forward in terms of Remedy as a studio and in terms of their storytelling. They haven't quite figured out everything yet, but all the pieces are in place for them to make their masterwork.
Well, and AJ, you mentioned the sort of gap between Alan Wake and Alan Wake 2. Yeah. And that is a significant period of time. We've talked about the games that were released between that period, but also like that's 11 years, right?
Yeah, right.
That Alan Wake was released in 2010. And the next time that we get firm confirmation of a new Alan Wake game, the actual Alan Wake sequel, Alan Wake 2, it's announced at the Game Awards in December 2021. Jeff Keighley drags Sam Lake up on stage after the teaser. And this is what Sam Lake says.
We've been a bit protective. We knew this is going to be a pretty scary experience.
I was going to say,
now we are convinced everybody is ready. You are ready.
What kind of game are we going to get for the sequel? Can you tell us something about it?
Yeah, we are breaking new ground here. This is going to be Remedy's first ever survival horror game.
Ooh,
our take on the genre.
Yeah.
The first game had horror elements to it, but it was an action game.
Yeah.
And we feel that this is the perfect genre to bring together the story and gameplay closer than ever before. Because the story, horror story, is at the very heart of this, and it's psychological, layered, deep mystery to dive into.
I remember watching that trailer, and I think I texted the both of you, and I was like, I don't know, man. I think this might be good.
I think the Slack message,
and you're both like, yeah, I also got oceanfront property in Arizona to sell you or something like that. Like, and I was like, no, but like, I think there's something here about it. And to that point, Josh, about how he felt protective of it, I have another quote here from him. BAFTA, of all people, did a video about the making of Alan Wake 2, and Sam Lake is quoted in it, sitting next to, I shit you not, a giant pile of all the previous drafts of Alan Wake 2 that's like up, that comes up to like his mid torso, and he kind of looks very tired, I guess is the best way to describe it. But here's the quote from him. I feel that when we ended up in this situation that we did the first game so long ago and only now got to the sequel, it feels like between these two, even if they are part of the same, there has been a lot of growing up in between, and that, I don't know, I hope that once this is done and out there and you look at the whole franchise, the first part and the second part, that it gives you something really, really unique in the sense that there was a gap of 9. Well, there were all those learnings and lessons and growing up in between, and yet it is very much the same thing. No, it's fucking not. I'm so sorry, Sam. It is not the same thing at all. I just felt so happy that there was that suffering along the way, that it didn't happen earlier, because all those steps along the way have informed what makes Alan Wake 2 what it is.
Yeah. Well, and to say about Alan Wake 1 is it does have novelty on its side, right? I don't think it's a very good game, but there would going into a horror game at that point in time, it was pretty much just zombies, right? It was just like Resident Evil had started changing up its formula, but it was still pretty much Resident Evil dominated. You know, he made a game that wasn't zombies. It was still kind of zombies. And it was about a writer, and you used a flashlight like in Luigi's Mansion. And it's a very different sort of game. There isn't another game, especially at that point in time, that plays or behaves just like Alan Wake does, for better and worse.
So with all of the hype, the game is released just in time for Halloween 2023. It's like the second or third week of October, I want to say. And rapturous reviews.
Earth-shattering reviews, masterpiece, 10 out of 10, game of the year for so many like websites and things. Like it was a very good year for video games last year. Terrible to work in the video game industry, but for the actual games that came out were magnificent. Like one of the best years in gaming that we've ever had. And the fact that it was standing up amongst those titans made me go, was I right?
Hey there, you are listening to a preview of a premium episode of The Worst of All Possible Worlds. If you'd like to listen to the rest of this, head on over to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/worstofall. And you can listen to not only the rest of this episode, but our entire backlog of premium episodes, bonus episodes, and if you subscribe at the $10 tier, you will get an extra episode of the podcast every single month. Again, that is patreon.com/worstofall. Hope to see you there.